Mr. O'Sullivan, the last time that you spoke to Euronews, you highlighted that you wanted to crack down on Chinese companies helping Russia circumvent certain EU sanctions, as well as those Chinese companies producing dual-use technologies that Russia can use on the battlefield. How is this faring?
Well, I think we have taken several actions. We have listed a number of Chinese companies. We recently listed some in a previous package, some Chinese banks who then agreed to discontinue funding Russian activities. So we have been active in taking action against Chinese companies, but I won't hide from you that China remains a very big problem for the circumvention of our sanctions.
How big?
Well, it's one of the biggest sources of circumvention. Both in terms of what we call backfilling. This means simply selling Chinese versions of goods which we previously sold as Europeans, so things like household goods and so forth, which is of course perfectly legitimate, but also unfortunately as a platform for the re-export from China of Western branded goods and EU branded goods. So this is still a problem. We raise it regularly at the highest level with the Chinese authorities, but you know their answer, which is to say that they don't feel they're doing anything wrong, so we still have to take unilateral action against Chinese companies and financial institutions.
But they've also retaliated following the 20th package of sanctions. China responded by banning at least 7 European defence companies from receiving certain dual-use products. Should we expect more reprisals from Beijing?
Yeah, I think the Chinese play hardball, as the Americans say, and I think we have to face up to that if we want to take action, they will also take equal action. But I think it is very important nonetheless that we continue to be able to send a strong message that we are vigilant about efforts to circumvent our sanctions and that where we see the evidence, we will take action.
But how does this work as the EU wants to forge closer trade ties with China?
Well, I mean, this is true of many countries. I always say that my job is to try and make sure that sanctions don't get in the way of the positive stuff we want to do with countries. It's clear that the agenda with China is very complex, from trade to security to tech to access to raw materials, all of these questions. And we have to look at the sanctions issue through that prism, and there always has to be a balance between, I would say, our offensive interests and our defensive interests. And I think it's complicated, but I think we manage it pretty well.
Certainly complicated. On the 20th package of sanctions, there was also the proposal from the Commission for the full ban on maritime services for Russian tankers as part of the country's shadow fleet. The understanding was that there should be approval first at the G7. Now, those leaders will meet later this month in Evian. Do you expect a breakthrough?
I think events in the Gulf have clearly changed the calculus about anything to do with energy. For the moment, what all Western economies are struggling with is access to energy at reasonable prices. The price has gone up, and there is scarcity of supply, also in the area, for example, of refined products, so diesel, jet fuel, and so forth. So I think at this point there is no appetite to take additional measures which might aggravate that situation. But I think the fundamental point, Angie, is that our sanctions on the energy side are having a huge impact on Russia. Russia's revenue has gone down. The public finances are in great difficulty. They're in deficit. So I think, notwithstanding the fact that we may not move forward in the short term on the maritime services ban, everything that we have done, whether it's the oil price cap, whether it's the actions against the shadow fleet, all of this has contributed to seriously undermining Russia's revenue from hydrocarbon exports. And this was one of our key objectives, and it is working.
But can you argue that what is going on in the Middle East regarding this war is blunting the effect of the EU sanctions against Russia? As you rightly pointed out, there are certain countries perhaps that want to take a more lax stance when it comes to acquiring Russian energy. Is this not having an impact on the efficacy of EU sanctions against Russia?
In the short term, no. To be honest, I mean, of course, it it all depends on how long this situation continues. But I think that the benefits of the short-term increase in prices are not enough for Russia to offset the massive structural damage that has been done to the Russian civilian economy. There's also, let's not forget, what the Ukrainians politely call kinetic sanctions, namely their attacks on Russian ports and Russian refineries. And the estimates are that Russia's ability to export hydrocarbons has been reduced by 25 to 30% as a result of these actions. So Russia's ability to profit from the higher prices in this situation is seriously impaired.
But the US has also waived and wavered its own sanctions against Russia exactly because of the conflict in the Middle East driving up the price of crude oil. What do you make of the United States perhaps relaxing its own sanctions against Moscow?
Well, I think the United States has maintained a very strong set of sanctions against Russia. Also, in last October, introduced sanctions against two major oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. The temporary measures which have been taken largely relate to allowing some third countries, particularly India, to continue to import some product which is on the sea. So, I mean, yes, we might prefer that this hadn't been done, but having said that, if you look at it in the bigger picture, it will not have a huge impact on the sort of the bottom line, which is Russia's difficulty to export, and above all, a difficulty to export at attractive prices. So I think this will have a small effect, but the macro impact on the Russian economy is what people need to keep their eyes on, and that is very clearly undermining Russia's ability to continue financing this war.
What do you expect to happen with the oil price cap, which many understand to be revised upwards? How will this have an impact on Russia?
Well, I obviously, with the price of oil now, north of $100 on occasions, this is a dramatically different situation than that which we faced, say, just after Christmas, where people were talking really about price of oil going down to maybe $30 a barrel. So we are in a new world just at the moment. I think we need to take a second look at the oil price cap. It's due for a revision in June under the previous understandings. And I think the one thing everyone is agreed on is that this we should not increase the price cap to a point where it becomes unduly generous towards Russia. So I think the objective is to keep it in or around the boundaries of where it is now to what was previously the maximum of 60. The precise mechanism for doing this will be discussed with the G7, but I don't think anyone wants to see the price cap adjusted in a way that reflects the temporary spike in oil prices.
The 20th package of sanctions against Russia by the EU also included a currency component targeting Russian stablecoins, crypto assets, as well as what is being touted as the digital ruble. Why did the EU take this route?
Well, because we are discovering that with our financial sanctions, which have been very effective in decoupling the Russian banking system from the West, that there is increasing use of digital or cryptocurrencies to try and evade this. So in the 19th package, we already introduced a major measures on digital and crypto, particularly in Kyrgyzstan, which we discovered was being used as a hub for evasion of our financial sanctions. And that's why in the 20th we've reinforced that, and we will continue to work in that area. This is a new area of work. Like all sanctions work, it's a constant updating and repairing of the sanctions as you see new trends emerging. And very clearly, the greater use of crypto and digital is now a feature of Russian circumvention.
How is the EU cracking down on these different forms of currencies? Because the United States is employing its own methods targeting Iranian crypto, which some experts have dubbed as quite invasive. How is the EU doing this?
Well, we're doing it the same way. I mean, in the 19 package, we sanctioned a major Russian Russian crypto network, the A7, A5, which is not just, it's a currency, but it's also a network. And we are continuing to identify those crypto activities which are facilitating circumvention. And so we basically cut off their ability to interact with European banks, because at some point, no matter what you do in the digital space or the crypto space, you have to interact with the fiat currency. You have to change it into a currency where you can actually buy something in the real world. And that's where it's that intersection that we target.
Okay. And my colleagues here at Euronews have also been reporting that there is a certain willingness among EU member states now that Hungary has dropped its veto to sanction the Russian Patriarch Kirill. This is the head of Russia's Orthodox Church. Why is he important to target?
Well, I don't want to get into, what might be in a future package. What I will say is that the change of government in Hungary has clearly led to a change of policy, and we will now see how that interacts. In the past, Hungary has vetoed with its vote a number of proposals for the sanctioning of entities or individuals. We will test how much that has changed, and so names which have appeared previously, such as that which you have mentioned, might well figure again. But I'm really not in a position at this point to go into details.
So you can't answer whether you're hopeful or not that the Patriarch will be targeted?
I certainly can't talk about individuals at this point. We will wait and see what's in the package.
And can you give us a taste of what will be included in the 21st package of sanctions?
Well, I think it will be very much, I would say, more of the same. It's going to deal with the energy issue. It's going to certainly include more listings of vessels. We're going to take more action against refineries and ports, probably. We are going to take some more trade sanctions. We will continue in the financial area. I suppose the point, Angie, that the really bottom line here is that what we have in place is a massive range of sanctions against Russia, which are having a huge impact. So every successive package is about tightening the screw. It's about closing the loopholes, putting additional pressure where we see there's been a temptation to sort of move into another area to try and avoid the existing sanctions. And that's what we'll be doing over the next, for as long as sanctions exist. So none of these packages will contain, I would say, big silver bullets where we say, now we've found the way to make sanctions even more effective. It's just constant care and diligence, improving and refining. And that's what will be in the next package. And
just going back to the 20th package of sanctions, for the first time the EU triggered the anti-circumvention tool
Indeed.
Against Kyrgyzstan. What country could be next? What's in your line of sight?
Well, by definition, we don't announce this, because we want to keep the element of surprise. I don't know if we will use this technique again. The point of it is...
Why not? Why wouldn't you use it again?
Well, I'm saying we have to see whether it is justified. Whether it is the most efficient way of achieving the objective, which is to stop these products getting to Russia. In the case of Kyrgyzstan, we noticed a remarkable increase in imports of two particular products into Kyrgyzstan, radio devices and CNC machines, and an equivalent remarkable increase in the export of the same products to Russia. So for us, this was a very clear case of pure circumvention of our sanctions. We were not convinced by the measures which the Kyrgyz authorities said they would take that this would stop it. So we basically banned the export to Kyrgyzstan of these products.
And you were recently in Kyrgyzstan. What did you hear from authorities regarding how this is working?
They reassured us that they would take the measures, and to which my answer was, well, we will look at the trade figures and we will look at the numbers, because we have not used the anti-circumvention tool for a lot of the battlefield products which can be traded. If we see that there is a substantial fall in any export of battlefield products from Kyrgyzstan to Russia, and we feel confident that the measures taken by the Kyrgyz authorities to prevent this in the future are solid, then we may indeed decide to lift the use of the anti-circumvention tool. But that's what we. So this is the first time we've triggered it, because we had a very clear example. If we see other other examples, we will not hesitate to use it. But our preferred modus operandi is to get the countries themselves to take systemic steps to prevent any re-export of sanctioned products from their territory to Russia.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, Mr. O'Sullivan.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.